Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Berachos, Daf Gimel. We are learning the sugya of from when is it Vadai Laila. We had in our Mishnah the opinion that Vadai Laila is from Tzeisak Yechavim. We just learned on Daf Beis Amid Beis the Shita of Rav Pinchas that explains that there is one star, not a big star, an average star, Vadai Yoim. And then you have what we call Bein Hashmashes. And once you have another two stars coming out, Tzeisak Yechavim, now you have Vadai Laila. Okay, that's where we left off. We're going to have on this daf other signs of nightfall. Not only these three, let's say, medium-sized stars, we're going to have as a simon for Vadai Laila the color of the horizon. And we will also tie this into Bein Hashmashes. So one type of color, Bein Hashmashes, darker color, Vadai Laila. And we're going to learn today, in today's daf, the concept of, when we speak about Shkia, which is what needs to happen for us to end Vadai Yom and to enter Bein Hashmashes. What Shkia? Is Shkia Tchila Shkia? The way we will learn Pshat, when the sphere of the sun begins to go under the horizon, or is Shkia Soif Shkia, which means that the entire sphere of the sun has to go under the horizon for you now to say Vadai Yom ended and you're beginning Bein Hashmashes. We will be quoting these words. We're not going to have on today's daf, but we have them in the Babli. The time of Bein Hashmashes, which is connected to the time that it takes a person to walk 3/4 of a mil. This is a very important daf. It's small, but we have enough time to go through all of these steps. How long does it take for a person to walk a mil? To be able to cheshbon 3/4 of a mil is a big machlokes. We're going to begin by speaking about a 18-minute mil, and then we're going to introduce a fantastic letter of the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur, B'negei Ashkia, which is also going to connect to the big machlokes between the Gaonim and the Rabbeinu Tam. We're going to speak about this when we get into the daf. And finally, at the end of the daf, we're going to have other opinions regarding the length of Bein Hashmashes. We're going to have it Rab Nechemia. We're going to have ultimately the Shita of Rebbe Yossi that says that Bein Hashmashes is keheref ayin. It's like the blink of an eye, and we'll speak about all of these topics. We left off on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Amid, Rebbe Yaakov. L'chaim. Yeah, you got it? Okay, says the Gemara, Rebbe Yaakov did Reimana. The Reimana either means from Rome, the Roman, or from the Darim of Eretz Yisrael. You know, the 5 Chachamim from the Darim, B'chlal Darim, Al Pi Kabbalah is Chachma, right? Or Chesed Gevura, which Chesed is connected to Chachma. South Americans are smarter, at least we think so, and we're humble. All right, Rabbi Yaakov the Raimana, B'Shem. Here again, when we spoke out that in the Yerushalmi everything is brief, that also includes, yesterday we spoke out that many times the Gemara doesn't say the word Amar. Another brevity is that the letters Aleph and Hey are often not there. So normally, Yehuda, Mitahei, what do we have over here? Rabbi Yehuda. B'Shem Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi. See, there's no Amar, but let's zok that what? Koichav Echad. He argues with Rav Pinchas when there's one star, Vadai Yom. This is like Rav Pinchas. Aber Shmuli Shnayim, once you have the second star, once you have the appearance of 2 stars, you have Laila. Right? Rav Pinchas B'Shem Rab Abba says you have to have 3 Keichavim. We said Beinanim. And he says 2 Keichavim Beinanim. Now, asks the Gemara on this opinion, it sounds like it's either Vadai Yom. When there's 1 star, it's still Vadai Yom. When there's 2 stars, Vadai Laila. We already began learning that there is this Bein Hashmashes, this twilight, this in-between period. So asks the Gemara of a lace suffix, does he not hold of a suffix? Now, why would he have to hold that there's a suffix? Who told you that there's a suffix? So the Charedim quotes from a Mishnah in Maseches Shabbos. What's amazing is that he doesn't quote it in Perek Mishnah, which is how you would quote a Mishnah. He quotes it The Charedim quotes it as the Mishnah is brought down in Bavli Shabbos Daflam Adal Nomadalov. So when you look in the Charedim, he's not quoting a Gemara, he's quoting a Mishnah, and the Mishnah uses the word Safek Chashecha. So you see that the Tanoim held that there is a time of a Safek, which would be Bein Hashmashas. Answers the Gemara, he holds of a time of a Safek. Islay Safek, which will be Ben Koichav LeKoichav. In other words, when one star just comes out, when you begin to see the first star, up until and even including when it appears, it's like a Vadayoim. But between that until the appearance of the second star is a period of time. We're not addressing how long yet. Then Koichav LeKoichav will be the Safek Chasheich of the Mishnah, or how we refer to the time as Bein Hashmashas. Okay. Now, like we mentioned in our intro, Atkan, we're using Koichavim as a siman of, is it day, is it Bein Hashmashas, is it Laila? Now we're going to use another sign. This is such a different ways of measuring in what halachic period are we in. Day, twilight, night. Plenty we learned in a Braisa. This is all Tanoim. Kol Zman Shepnei Mizrach Ma'adimois. Okay? Now, the taich of this literally is whenever the eastern face of the sky is reddening. Masechta Shabbos Daf Lamed Hey, for people that remember, there's a machlokes between Abaye and Rava as to how to interpret these words. Okay, we're going to learn the Gemara here the way Abaye interprets it, which is the pshat. The pshat is when the eastern face of the sky is reddening. Now, guys, where does the sun set? Sun sets in the west. When the sun sets in the west, it's amazing how the sky works. If you look at the opposite side, there's a redness there. I want you to know that the Rava has a whole different understanding of this statement. Rava says, Pnei Mizrach, what's Pnei Mizrach? The side of the horizon that's facing Mizrach. What side faces Mizrach? Maitiv. Why don't you say Maitiv? Put the kash. Anyways, that's Rava and a whole different shot. We're going to learn this the way Abaye learned. So whenever the eastern face of the sky is reddening, okay, then it's still yoim. If the color is red, that's day, vaday day. Hichsifu, you know what the word hichsifu means? Hichsifu normally means in Bavli, ashamed, right? Ashamed. Here it means becoming gray. I want to say something important. Again, I'm quoting this. I heard this from Rabbi Yosef Grossman of blessed memory in his intro to the Yerushalmi, that the Aramaic of the Bavli is a mixture between pure Aramish and Persian. The Persians are Charain Gehakt in Talmud Bavli. In Yerushalmi, the Yiddish, the Jewish Aramaic was Aramaic and Greek. So Stamton on always, we're going to have many words that are Aramish, but it's different, and you have to get used to even the language. You have to get used to. Here, Rechsifu means gray. Then that's Bein Hashmashas. Hishchiru, when again, according to Abaye, we're speaking here about the eastern horizon. What does black mean? To what point? That Naseh ha'elyon shava latachtin, that when the top part of the sky and the bottom part of the sky are of the same color black. What does that mean? It means, it's interesting, that the top of the sky is darker than the eastern horizon. The eastern horizon like mirrors off the west. So just like everyone knows, we're going to speak soon when it comes to the sheet of the Rabbeinu Tam, right? You have the sphere going down. There's no sun, but you have the rays of the light. Then you have the glow of the sun. There is some of that also in the east. But when the bottom of the east and the 12 o'clock is equally black, that's night. Okay, that was the second siman that we have of how to know day, Bein Hashmashas night. Forget about the stars. And by the way, the stars are very difficult. Like we had at the end of yesterday's daf, that you have large stars that Bechal don't count, right? That was the top of Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, even not for the first star. Even not for the first star. Like the planets don't count. If you're going to learn pshat that the star was the Venus, it's not just Venus. That's nothing to do. It's stars. Elama Kechavim Beinanim. And just to mention that there's a sheet of Rabbeinu Yoina that holds that the three stars are small stars. Which would, in other words, it's so hard to measure it with stars. The mile of this Braisa is getting easier. The easiest will be soon. The easiest. This is in between, the color. Now, I know you have to have shimush because there's many hues of red, and we speak about gray. Am I gray? I don't know. Vlad is still red. I don't know. Like you have to know how to measure black, the top, the bottom. I think it's, to me, it sounds easier than the stars. Okay, now this is going to be the intro to the Go'ainim and the Rabbeinu Tam that will speak out Baal Peh. Says the Gemara, guys, we are in middle of that Gimel Amud Aleph. Rebbe Yoimer, Halavana bit kufasa. Oh, I got ahead of myself. There's still one more detail. Halavana bit kufasa, when the moon is in its greatest strength. Now, what would you say, Shmuli, when you hear the words, the moon in its greatest strength? What does that refer to? Atazai, full moon. That's the meaning. Full moon means, guys, if you want to look inside the first widest line of the Charedim, not the medium, the first widest line, the one that goes both under the Gemara and the Pnei Moshe, Levana bit Kufasa, says the Charedim, Leil Chamisha Asar B'Chodesh, the night going into the 15th, Shehi bit Kufasa Umiluyah. Now, I want to say it like this, and we're going to go back to these words. Miluya is what Vlad said, full. Miluya. Kufa means there is the sphere of the moon, and then there is the shine of the moon, the power of the moon. The power is to do with how much lichtigkeit. And I'm going to go back to these words in a moment, and I'll explain what I mean by it. And all of that is on the night of the 15th. Now, what happens? Guys, we learned in Kiddush HaChodesh, right? By the Moilad, the moon is directly with the sun. On the 15th of the month, the moon is on the opposite side of the sun, which means that when you have sunset, you have moonrise. Now the Gemara is going to speak about which one happens first. The night of the 15th, let's read the words of Rebbe, that Hana, that his Galgal Chamal Lishkoya, when the sun begins to set. Let me interpret these words, guys. So far, like the Go'ainim, I'm gonna say we're gonna come back to this in a moment. Let's understand that we're speaking about the sphere of the moon, Shmuley. His Chil Galgal Chamal Lishkoya, the sphere of the sun, means when you have a ball, right? And you have the horizon. When the ball, from your perspective, hits the horizon. So you cannot see the whole 360 because the sphere began to go down. And V'tchilas Galgal Levana La'alois, which is also when the ball of the Levana begins to go up, mamish, one opposite the other. That is the end of day, and now we enter the Zman called Bein Hashmashos. I want to add something before we go on. What do I want to add? Again, I'm saying words that we don't have in the Yerushalmi. The words that Bein Hashmashos will last for the time that it takes a person to walk 3/4 of a mil, we don't have this here. But it's a machayim. Even though it's also a machloikas. Does it take you 18 minutes to walk a mil, or 22 and some minutes, or 24 minutes? At least you don't need stars. You look at the sphere. We're gonna amend the version of Rebbe. You see that Bein Hashmashos. How long is Bein Hashmashos? A certain amount of minutes. The time that it takes to walk a mil, and then it's Vadei Laila. Okay. Now, first of all, Amar Rebbe Chanina, guys. Rebbe Chanina, there is a Tana and there is an Amoir. This Rebbe Chanina, as the Charedim will argue, is an Amoira. This Rebbe Chanina is an Amoira. And that's very important because since this is an Amoira, he cannot argue with Rebbe. He's going to say different than Rebbe. Who is he to argue with Rebbe? It must mean that he's amending what Rebbe said. He's letting us know the version that the Gemara quotes from the Braisa, that Rebbe says that when the Galgal of the Chama begins to go under, Rebbe didn't say those words. This is a mistake in the Girsa. Rabbi Chanina says, no, that I'm adding what the Charedim says. Soiv Galgal Chama Lushkoya. No. It's when the sphere of the sun ends, when it finishes going under. How long does it take? Just in a few minutes. Doesn't matter, but we want to know about those few minutes. That is when Utchilas Galgal Levana La'alois, when the sphere of the sun ends going down. Notice he's adding, that is when the Galgal of the Levana begins to go up, and we have a nice Eden Kaddishin, the holy mosquitoes joining the shir. The Tani Shmuel came and actually to back up Rabbi Chanina's version in Rebbe, And we don't like having arguments, machlokes. So I know this is Shmuel's Braisa. That what? Now, according to the Braisa of Shmuel, Ein halavana zoirachas b'sha shachama sheikas. No, before the sun, Vlad, is fully under on the 15th. The moon is not zoirachas. Now, what does the word zoirachas mean? Who knows? Shine. The Charedim will add that. The Charedim is going to say, b'mitzia, sometimes you can see the sun and the moon up at the same time. B'leil chamisha asa. So, just another nuance, that there is the actual globe, sphere, but then when are we seeing the shine of it? I know this is hard to measure. When does the moon begin to give off its shine? When the sun is fully under. And similarly, v'loi shoikaas b'sha shachama zoirachas. Rather, the moon rises, guys, at the end of sunset, like Rab Chanina. It's better to say that Rebbe was not arguing. Rab Chanina is right that we got the wrong version of Rebbe, because like this, Rebbe and the Tani Shmuel will be the same. And the moon rises, Shmuli, at the end of the sunset. When does the moon set? When does the moon set? At the beginning of sunrise. In other words, let me say like this, that when does the moon begin to shine brightly? When the sun is fully under. Okay. And Beleil Chamisha Asar, if you want to know when the end of the day is, at that moment. Because until when, prior to the moon shining brightly, still yoim. The moment you begin to get the zoirachas of the moon, which is going to be what we call, guys, soif shkia. What's soif shkia? When the sphere of the sun is fully under, that is when you begin bein hashmashos. Guys, are we good? Okay, this is simple. I'm going slow because this is a sugya that many of us heard, the Goinim and the Rabbeinu Tam, when is shkia, how long is shkia. So I want to make first a quick chazara, and I would like to say clearly that what I'm sharing right now is prior to the letter of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe has three big chidushim that really resolves a big challenge, both with the Goinim and with the Rabbeinu Tam. So, Aleph, number one. In this siman, we're using the sunset as the siman. When does Ben Hashmashas begin? Without doubt, it's easier for people like us to use that versus Tzeis HaKechavim. What's Kechavim, Beinanim, what's one star? Not a big one, not a little one, a medium one. It's even easier than the Pnei Mizrach, especially that there's a machlokes Abaye v'Rava. Like, are you looking to the east, you're looking to the west? This is easy. Okay. Number two, again, we don't have this in the Yerushalmi, we have this in the Babel, that the moment you throw in there, I know when day ends, by Shkia Sacham, and then you begin Ben Hashmashas, the Zman of a Safek. Ben Hashmashas, says in Babli, Kiluch, 3/4 of a mil. I'm a chaya. Just tell me how much is Siluch mil, and then after that begins Tzeis HaKechavim, or begins night. We're going to go now that it takes to walk 18 minutes for a mil. And stop to know that even okay, let me leave it at that. So what's 3/4 of a mil? Just 13.5 minutes. Now, let me tell you the shita of the Goinim. And no. 3/4 of 18 is 13 and a half. Okay. According to the Goinim, the Havamina of the understanding of Rebbe, the original Girsa of Rebbe, is from when the Shkia begin. We're going to use the words Tchila Shkia. Let's learn Pshat Tchila Shkia by the Goinim that the sphere began, it hit the horizon. Once you cannot see under the ball itself, now you begin counting the 13 and a half minutes, after which is Tzeis HaKechavim, after which is night. The Rab Chanina's emendation, and the Gemara substantiating that by bringing the Tani Shmuel, is that only begin counting Ben Hashmashas from Soif Shkia. We're going to again type Soif Shkia means from when the entire sphere of the sun is now under the horizon. Now you begin Ben Hashmashas, 13 and a half minutes, after which you have Tzeis HaKechavim. That is the shita of the Goin. Now, the Rabbeinu Tam has a whole different understanding of Tchila Shkia and Soif Shkia. The reason why the Rabbeinu Tam rejects this opinion is Pashut. I'm using the words that the later Achreinim spoke about. The Gra, the Alter Rebbe. What the Gaonim say is Keneged Hachush. Because how can there even be a Havamin that from when the sun begins to set, you only add 13 and a half minutes and you have night? It's so not night. Worse is that even according to the Maskan of the Gemara, that you only begin counting the 13 and a half minutes by Soif Shkia. I want you to know here in LA, especially when you're by the beach, you observe sunset, add 13 and a half minutes, it's not night. And more than that, if you want to throw in the Tzeisa Kechavim, you're not going to have Kechavim. You will have planets. You're not going to have Kechavim. That's the problem. L'choira, because of that, the Rabbeinu Tam went min hakatza lakatza, which is weiter a problem. He went to the opposite extreme. He says like this, I'm saying these words, just l'choira, that this Rabbeinu Tam is written in Sefer HaYashar. However, it's quoted in Psachim Daf Tzadik Daled and Tosfos, and on Shabbos Daf Lamed Daled on the base. This is the two places in Talmud Bavli where we learned, and we spoke about it when we learned, and you can go to our recordings over there about Shita the Rabbeinu Tam. And the words that he uses is like this. First, I wrote it down to make it clear. You have the sphere of the sun that we're not even talking about. No one is talking about it, even in the Havamim. After the sphere of the sun sets, you have sun rays. It takes another Kedei Hiluch 3 mil and a quarter of a mil, based on a mil being 18 minutes, that's another 58 and a half minutes. That's almost an hour. Takes after the sphere goes down, you still have in the western horizon, not the Pnei Mizrach, like Rava, in the west, you have sun rays. Tchila Shkia would mean, according to the Havamina, that you begin counting when the sphere went fully under. It's the beginning because the rays are beginning to go under. Then when we made this emendation, Abchanina amended and he quoted the Berachos of Shmuel. No. You only begin Bein Hashmoshes. B'soif Shkia. Soif Shkia would mean after 58 and a half minutes. That's when you begin Bein Hashmoshes. And then you have the other 13 and a half minutes. So that's 72 minutes. Now you have Adai Light. That is the classic understanding of the sheet of the Rabbeinu Tam. That's what you have in many Hasidic groups. It's Mamash Yeharik Val Yava. That the end of Shabbos is 72 minutes after what we call Shkia. Shkia means again after the sphere goes under. After that you count 72 minutes. Problem with that is that we know night begins before that. It's against Keneged Achush. Night begins before that. You have other simanim, speaking about the top of the sky and the horizons being the same black. It's way before that. And even more than that, I'm adding a very important detail, is that it's not universal, this Kedei Hiluch. It's not universal. It depending how far you're away from the equator, you have to translate it. What would it mean? And if you're going to go more to the north, like the Yidden lived in Russia, the emes sheet of the Rabbeinu Tam is not 72 minutes. It's much more than that. And it's mamish way into the night. It's Keneged Achush. The problem is both shitas are Keneged Achush. What did the Alter Rebbe do? The Alter Rebbe wrote a letter. It's printed in the Siddur, and he had 3 chidush. First of all, even though the Alter Rebbe and the Shulchan Aruch, like everyone, followed the Rabbeinu Tam, during the times of the Alter Rebbe, everyone switched back over to the Gaon. Clear. In the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbeinu Tam. In the Siddur, Gaon. However, the Alter Rebbe explains the sheet of the Gaon. What's the sheet of the Gaon? Number one, for this, Hiluch mil is not 18 minutes mil. 3/4 of a mil is not 13 and a half minutes. It's 3/4 of 24 minutes. How many minutes is that? 18 minutes. The biggest chiddush of the Alter Rebbe is, again, we're going soif shkia. So we keep on saying when the end of the sphere of the Goinim goes under. Listen to the words of the Alter Rebbe. Shkira haniris is what I explained. When you're standing by the beach and you see the whole sphere going under, that's soif shkia. Says the Alter Rebbe, that's not soif shkia. Because when the sphere of the sun goes under, when you're standing on the beach, taka, the sphere is under. What would happen if you would be standing on the head of a tree? The higher you are, the more you have to wait for the sun to go under. So the Alter Rebbe really says there are 3 shkias. There's shkia haniris, Then you have the Shkia of Rosh Ilanis, which is we're spoken on minutes, points. And then you have on the Harim Hagavoyim Sheba Eretz Yisrael. The Alter Rebbe says Shkia, Soif Shkia, the beginning of the whatever we're counting, according to the Go'ainim, is really in halachic 4 degrees or 4 minutes. It's not exactly 4 minutes after the normal Shkia. So the Alter Rebbe first adds 4 minutes before you begin counting what? Before you begin counting 3/4 of a mil, which is 3/4 of 24 is 18. And then the Alter Rebbe is going to, as we're going to get to soon, don't worry, there's a small Amid, we'll get to it today. There's the sheet of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says that Ben Hashmashers is Keher of Ayin. The Alter Rebbe quotes the most, the longest shita in the Rishonim, in the interpretation of Shitas Rabbi Yossi. That head of Ayin means 2 minutes, 2 minutes that you add at the end. So it's 4 conceptual minutes, plus 18 minutes, plus 2 minutes. That is the Go'ainim. And that's exactly what it is. And you should know that that the astronomers will tell you that's taka when you have the Tzei Sakir Chavam, the 3 Chavam Beinei. It fits. Okay. From the Haram Hagavoyim. No, the Alter Rebbe is machadish that even though the Shkira Hanidis, the Go'ainim spoke about Soif Shkia, not like Rabbeinu Tam that says Soif Shkia means at the end of the sun rays. No, Soif Shkia means at the end of the sphere, when the sphere goes under. But the sphere going under doesn't mean the ball when you stand by the beach. It means if you would be standing on a tall mountain, only when you cannot even see the sphere at all from there. A few minutes later. Then you begin counting the hiluch, 3/4 of a mil. A mil is 24 minutes. And then you add Rabbi Yossi. Okay, now we have that. Now let's go read inside. Guys, we are in Daf Gimel Lamed Aleph. Guys, don't worry. We have mamash enough time to finish today's Machayim. Second to last line on Daf Gimel Lamed Aleph. Rab Shmuel Bar Chia Bar Yehuda B'Shem Rab Chanin. Here Yehuda has a hay. So very good to point out that even though we mentioned that in the Yerushalmi there are olives and there are hays that are missing, it's not consistent. And it also is time to know that there's many emendations, there's many girsois. Maybe that was a mistake. Now, let's go back to the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say, Shmuley? That for a kohen to be able to eat, from when can say the Shema, from when the kohanim eat truma. How does it work? I'll tell you how it works. If a kohen is coming and he has to go to the mikvah, the kohen's going to the mikvah and then becoming dark only works if he went to the mikvah vadayoim. Vadayoim. If the kohen went to the mikvah by bein hashmashas, which could be Laila, then he can only eat truma the next night. Obviously, have a suffix. He has to go to the mikvah by the day. Then you have to have head of shemesh. He doesn't have to wait for the last second. But in certain cultures, you wait to the last second. But as long as he chapped that before Shkia began, now I want you to know that this Gemara is one of the sources of the Rabbeinu Tam. What we're going to learn right now. So turn to Amid. This is all a raya that you only begin Shkia, not in the beginning. Shkia is at the end of Shkia. Even when the sphere of the sun began to set, you're going to fall off your chair now if you're going to learn like the Go'ainim. This is a raya to the Rabbeinu Tam. That Adam Oimid B'Rosh Hara Carmel, if a person is standing on the head of Hara Carmel, guys, Hara Carmel today is in Haifa. So at the moment you see the sun touching the horizon, not like the wrong version of Rebbe. According to the first version of Rebbe, too late. Shkia means Bein Hashmashas. Bein Hashmashas means you can't go to the mikveh and eat truma that night, because maybe it's already the next day. You still have enough time to go to the mikveh. Now, according to the Rabbeinu Tam, we said that Vadayoim is soif, the rays of the sun going under. Even before the Alter Rebbe, according to the Alter Rebbe, you have more time. Even if the Hiluch meal is only 18 minutes. But if you have now 3 meals and a quarter, which is 58.5 minutes minimally, that's the time that fits over here. If you begin to see Shkia, you can be standing at the head of Hara Carmel. You know what you can do? The Kohen Yoided, you can go down to the Mediterranean, and V'oila, and you can chop that arayin before Soif Shkia. Now let me tell you something. According to the way the Go'ainim understood Tchila Shkia and Soif Shkia, what are we talking about? We're talking about from when the sphere touches until when the sphere goes under. Guys, it's a few minutes. Today with the car, there's no way in the world you can be on the top of Hara Carmel and in a few minutes drive down and go into the mikveh and get out of the mikveh. And another thing, when are you tahar? What part of the mikveh brings tahara? We spoke about this when we learned the Rambam. You always have this in Chazal. Not lav dafka going under, going up. The va'oila. That's why what did you say? You go into the mikveh. You have to v'toivel va'oila. You have to go out. The tahara comes when you go out. When you go out, now that has to happen when it's v'adayim. So you should know that chazaka b'yom tov. This fits the Rabbeinu Tam. This is a big kasha on the Go'ainim. And to answer the Go'ainim, the Pnei Moshe says, read just the top Pnei Moshe, right on the top right side. Adam Oimeh B'Reish HaKarmel, Shuhu, what does it mean? Not on the top of the mountain. Al Sfas Hayam. Beroish, what does the head mean? L'chaim.
Chaim.
The Roish means at the edge, not on the top. In other words, when you're standing on the white, beautiful Haifa sound, when you see a kohen is coming, he wants to eat truma that night, you're having a good family moment. Sunday, fun day. You see the sun hit the horizon, so he's saying, Chapanayim, you have enough, let's go with the lean. It's 3-4 minutes. That's all it takes. That makes sense. If you're standing by the beach, in the Wasser, a few minutes, take off your clothing, go into the water, get up. If you did that, it was still Vadayim. If we would have learned like the original mistaken version in Rebbe, Shkias from when the sun hits the horizon, it's too late. You taka have 18 minutes, to whatever Ben Hashmoshes is, but you can't go to the mikveh Ben Hashmoshes and eat Truma that night because maybe Ben Hashmoshes is already night. Beautiful. The Pnei Moshe says it to farenfer the sheet of the Go'ainim. Okay, now says the Gemara, Hadod the Tamar, this statement, that what? Let's go back to the Rabbeinu Tam. That you can be on top of the mountain and you can go there. Let's say you only have 58.5 minutes. So that's already not so simple. So there were two roads going down from the top of the mountain. There was the highway. The highway is what the Alter Rebbe calls in the beginning of Tanya. It's Taka, it's Derech, Arucha. It's a longer road, even though it's a highway, so Psara, but it takes more time. Then you had the shortcut. So you should know that when the coin is on top, let's go with the Rabbeinu Tam, and you have taken 58.5 minutes, or according to the Alter Rebbe, more, because you have 3 mil and a quarter based on a 24 mil, whatever that time is. Okay? Hadad Teimar, Bahahuda Azalei Beka Pundera, that you are using, you're using not the zip line, that would be less, a shortcut. But Mahuda Azal Liam Is Rata, if you're going, what's a highway? Loy B'da. Not that person. We're not talking about that person. Okay, now, how long is Ben Hashmoshes? Ezu Ben Hashmoshes. So Amar Rab Tanchuma, Latipa Shal Dam, Shehi Nasun Al Gabe Chado Shal Sayiv, that if you put a drop of blood on the edge of a sword, when we learned Talmud Bavli, I used to say sword. And the Gabbai Arange knocked after many years. See, I'm beginning on the right foot. That if you put a drop of dam on the tip of a sword without a W, and it takes, now not mayim, when you put water on the tip, on the edge of a sword, water, it's right away. It's going to flow down. Dam has more substance. So it takes another rega. The time that nechlaka hatip or lakan or lakan, that's your whole ben hashmoshes. This is either like Rabbi Yossi that we'll have in a few lines, that Ben Hashmoshes is keherifying, it's not the hiluch of a 3/4 of a mil, or according to the Pnei Moshe, it's not mamish Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is quicker. The herifying would have been mayim. Had he held keherifying, he would have said mayim. This is dam, but it's a very small amount of time. So now we are already introducing not from when does Ben Hashmoshes begin, how long does it last? So we kept on quoting the Babli. Now we'll see that we don't have that quoted here, Bachlal. So one sheet is it's a very small amount of time. Now the Gemara is going to quote another Brais, another Machlokes Tanoi. Ezu Ben Hashmoshes. How long does Ben Hashmoshes last? So here we're going to quote Mishetishka Hachamo. Now we already established, we spoke about the Goinim, about the Rabbeinu Tam, the way the Alter Rebbe explains. But whatever the words L'Kula Alma will be from Soif Shkia, for how long? Kedei sheyahalach adam chatzi mil. Who holds that Tana? Divrei Ram Nachem. So like this, if a mil is 24 minutes, which is what, not if, we go with the Alter Rebbe, then Rabbi Nechemia holds Ben Hashmashas is 12 minutes. If we're going to, by the way, 12 minutes according to the Alter Rebbe, plus Be'erech 4 minutes, plus Epis 2 minutes. It's minimally, it's really going to be 20 minutes after what we call Shkia. But let's go. If we're going to go the way the Welt understands 3/4 of a mil, the way they apply it, and even the people that like the Hasidim that follow the Rabbeinu Tam, no one says anything more than 72 minutes. Even though Chazal say, Hiluch 4 mil, the Rabbeinu Tam, 4 mil. We interpret it to mean 72 minutes based on an 18-minute mil. Let's go. If the 18-minute mil, it's 9 minutes. If it's a 24-minute mil, then it's 12 minutes. That's Rab Nechemi. Now, says Rabbi Yossi Yoimer, the famous Rabbi Yossi, Bein Hashmoshes Keherafayim. According to the Pnei Moshe, this is even less than the time of Rebbe Tanchuma, even less. Dam on the Chadosh Shel Cherev, it takes up 2 seconds. This is a Keherafayim, the blink of an eye. This is easy to understand. Now, today's daf will conclude with the final statement of Rabbi Yossi. That's enigmatic. That's not clear what he meant. And he added, "V'lo yochlu la'amoid olav chachamim." The chachamim were unable to determine something about Rabbi Yossi. Something about Rabbi Yossi. Now, there are 2 possibilities of what they had a doubt in, and I'm going to speak it out Baal Peh. But I think today, just to make a good sequel, maybe we're going a little bit too slow. I just want to get this clear. So we had simanim of night, beginning with already yesterday's daf, 3 Kerchavim, making it sure that none of them should be the big ones or none of them should be planets. Then we learned today the other shita that it's really only 2 Kerchavim, but there's still a time of Bein Hashmashas. Then we had other simanim of when does night begin or when does Bein Hashmashas begin, the color of the horizon, the Shkia, Tchila Shkia, Shaiv Shkia. And now we're learning about Bein Hashmashas. So the most lenient opinion is Keherafayim. Now, there's a machloikes amoyroyim b'shitas Rabbi Yossi, and instead of saying it by heart, we'll read it inside, then I'll chazer it by heart. I know Rabbi Yossi is a Tana, and sometimes it can get confusing, but this, by the dot now, this Rabbi Yossi and Avach are 2 amoyroyim. So it's Rabbi Yossi, the amoyra, I'm going to say that the whole time, interpreting, understanding Rabbi Yossi the Tana. So Rabbi Yossi and Avacha, Havi Yosfin, they were sitting, Omar Rabbi Yossi the amoyra, to his chaver Avacha. My friends, let us get used to a new verbiage of the Talmud Yerushalmi, of the Yerushalmi. Loi mistabra, does it not make sense? This is to be understood as a statement, that this is the way it is. Does it not make sense? Not loi mistabra doesn't make sense. Does it not make sense that soif chatzi mil de Rab Nechemia, geheref ayin de Rab Yossi, is it not reasonable that the Chachamim, they knew when the Keheref Ayin of Rabbi Yossi is? Rabbi Yossi says, Ben Hashmashas is Keheref Ayin. Number 1. Then we add, and the Chachamim didn't understand. So first, Rabbi Yossi, the Amoyed is saying, blood, let me tell you what they knew, and then I'll explain to you what they didn't know. What they did know is the Keheref Ayin is at the end of let's go with the 9 minutes, the end of the Chatzim. Eloma, and which would mean, according to Rab Nechemia, what's the status of those Chatzi Mil? What's the status? Bein Hashmashas. According to Rabbi Yossi, those Chatzi Mil is Vadayoim. The head of Ayin is only at the end of it, the last moment of it, or a moment after it. Machlekes and that also, it's a moment. That is where you have Bein Hashmashas. What is the v'lo chachamim la'amid? If they knew that, like, does it not make sense that for sure, again, chatzi mil de Rab Nechemia, keheref ayin de Rabbi Yossi? It's placed at the end. What is the doubt? The doubt is, what is the status of that head of ayin? Is that head of ayin also still vadayoim? Or is the status of this head of ayin Vadai Laila? Or is Rabbi Yossi's Bein Hashmashas a suffix, whether it's Yoim or Laila? In other words, there was a doubt as what does Rabbi Yossi hold concerning the status of Bein Hashmashas? They didn't understand, because we are learning the whole time. There's Vadai Yoim, Vadai Laila, and then there's Bein Hashmashas, which is a Zman of a suffix. Maybe Rabbi Yossi didn't hold that way about Bein Hashmashos. We don't know what he holds regarding Bein Hashmashos. But when is his Bein Hashmashos? For sure, at the end of Rab Nechemia, which would mean that there is a machlokes Rab Nechemia and Rab Yossi Vadai in the following. Rab Nechemia holds from Soif Shkia for the next Hiluch Chatzi Mil. That's Bein Hashmashos. According to Rab Yossi, from Soif Shkia for the next Chatzi Mil is Vadayoim. That for sure they argue. And Vadayoim. Elama, now what? Now, what is the status? That's one option. And the Gemara says, Amalei Rav Acha agreed with his colleague Rabbi Yossi Damayda that ano savar kein ichal toichet hazoi. Aber the other Amayda Rab Chizkiya lo yomar kein. He doesn't agree with that. What does he hold? Elakol head of ayin, the head of ayin. Sheba chatzi mil de Rab Nechemia safiku. No, you don't understand. Let me tell you this. Rab Nechemia holds that Bein Hashmashos, which is chatzi mil, it's 1 unit of time. All of it has the status of Bein Hashmashos. Rabbi Yossi holds that the status of Bein Hashmashos, which is, now I'm saying, we know what it is. You know what Bein Hashmashos is according to Rabbi Yossi? The way we understand it. It is a time of a suffix. He says that the Bein Hashmashos suffix period is only kehet of ayin. When does it occur? Sometimes in those 9 minutes. Sometimes in those 12 minutes. Sometimes in the Mahalach Hatzimel, which would mean it's not 1 unit of time. If the head of ayin of Rabbi Yossi would be placed in the middle, Chachamim didn't know, that would mean that the first, let's go with the Alter Rebbe, we're Hasidim, 12 minutes. So up until minute 6, Vadayoim. Then you have a head of ayin of Bein Hashmashos, only, which is suffix, for short means suffix, and then for the next 6 minutes, it's Vaday Laila. Maybe the head of ayin is placed a third into the Chatzi Mil. Maybe it's placed at the beginning. Maybe it's placed at the end. And that's the meaning that they didn't understand when does Rabbi Yossi's head of ayin, when do we place it? Because he doesn't agree with Rab Nechemia that the whole Chatzi Mil is 1 unit. No, it's somewhere in it. We don't know when. These are very two different shots. So again, either we know that Rabbi Yossi meant, Rabbi Yossi Damoira knows that the head of ayin of Rabbi Yossi is at the end of the Rab Nechemia sheet. The nuance, at the end or a moment afterwards. So what? We don't know how Rabbi Yossi understands the pshat. What's the status of the head of ayin? Or we have the sheet of Rabbi Chizkiya. No. The head of ayin, Bein Hashmashos, Rabbi Yossi means Bein Hashmashos, suffix. He's arguing with Rab Nechemia. It's during your Chatzi Mil, but it's 1 moment, and we don't know when to place it, which is a big thing, which would mean that according to Rab Yossi, according to Rab Chizkiya, according to Rab Yossi, the whole Chatzi Mil is not Bein Hashmashos. Some of it is Vadayoim. Some of it is Vaday Laila. There is a head of ayin part of it that's a suffix, and that will help us chap. Dav Dalet. God willing, to be continued.
Good Shabbos.
Okay, we went slow or went clear?
Sounds super confusing.
Sorry, I thought I was so clear. I was so
No, I didn't say you're
Definitely
confusing.
not
I
too
said the
slow.
concept is confusing. If Bein Hashmashos is the middle of a period, but we don't know where it is, and it only lasts Keher Ayin, how halachically can you do anything with that?
correct.
It's not a suffix day. It's sure
In other words, that you're not saying. In other words, that there won't be a nafkamina b'poil. The poil. Let's go back to the kohen. If a kohen wants to go to the mikvah, he has to go to the mikvah before the Rab Nechemia's Chatzi Mil, before Soif Shkia. Because since we don't know L'Rab Nechemia, the whole thing is a suffix. And even according to Rabbi Yossi, it could be Rabbi Yossi's head of ayin is in the beginning. If it's in the beginning, I know the poil, there's no nafkamina. But there will be a nafkamina and the daf dalet. For that, you have to come Monday. There'll be a big nafkamina on daf dalet.
If you know that it's at the end,
Huh?
if you know that the head of ayin is at the end of the time, so then you know that you have an opinion to always rely on that's day, which you need for.
Yeah, if we would know that it's at the end, then according to Rabbi Yossi, the whole night, the whole Chatzi Mil is Vadayoim.
Right. But the halacha that helps us.
Okay, we'll see.